Welcome to Conflict Coach with Dr. Emily Taylor. I'm a mediator, developmental psychologist, conflict resolution teacher, and mom of 5. And just like you, I've had my fair share of conflict. Over time, I've realized conflict isn't something to fear. It's simply part of life. What matters is how we respond, and if we have the tools to handle it with confidence and care. And that's what this podcast is all about. In each episode, you'll hear me coach someone through a real conflict they're facing. You'll listen as they share their story, and I'll guide them towards solutions that align with their goals and values. Along the way, I'll point out skills and strategies you can use in your own life, whether at work, at home, or in your other relationships. So whether you've been with us since season 1 or you're brand new, welcome. I'm glad you're here. Let's jump in. So today we're going to do something a little different. Instead of a normal coaching session, I brought in a guest, Miriam, who happens to be my mother. And I wanted to bring in Miriam because she's had a lot of experiences over a lifetime. And I thought she could have a pretty good perspective on conflict over a lifetime. Not because she's been spared a lot of pain, but because she's chosen to learn from life's challenges rather than become bitter. After she went through a painful divorce with my dad when I was a teenager, she began supporting herself as a teacher. Many of her students were refugees and came from immigrant backgrounds, and she focused on loving and understanding those individual students. Some of them still keep in contact with her today. After teaching, she served as a missionary throughout Latin America and Spain, and she remains in touch with and even hosts her international friends when they visit the United States. Her wisdom and tenderness have inspired me greatly, and I hope you appreciate what she brings to our conversation. As a very shy person naturally, kind of unlike me, this is her first time doing a formal interview. But like my mother, I hope that you will choose to be vulnerable and move through pain to develop that empathy that shines through in this interview. Thank you so much for being here.
Oh, thank you for trusting me.
Of course.
Thank you.
Well, first off, just looking back over your life, what kinds of conflicts seem to repeat themselves?
Oh, I think generational, between parents and children, anything to do with race or class or the powerful versus those who feel powerless, us and them, the rich, the poor.
Mm-hmm. What has surprised you most about how people handle disagreement today compared to earlier in your life?
I think cynicism has become almost a virtue. We blame others. We don't investigate before we accuse people. There's much more of a divide, as everybody talks about these days. Whether you disagree or not about an issue, you jump to the side that you believe that you're on. So much is anonymous. You can, instead of directly confronting or debating in a public arena, you just post and people take offense and it just goes out of control.
You actually were in the Bay Area. You were at the University of California at Berkeley during the 1960s. Mm-hmm. How do you think it was different then than it is now in this period of kind of upheaval with society?
It was more of a almost optimistic idea that things could change. People were not so negative in what they said, but it was more, how can we improve our society? And a lot of it was done through music. There's a lot, all the old folk singers were very popular. Of course, our parents were afraid that things were going out of control. And I participated in a lot of civil rights things, but also it was just kind of the younger generation exerting their freedom. And in general, I think it was an optimism that the world was opening up. It was more global. There were wonderful organizations that began after World War II. I mean, the United Nations, the Peace Corps, just looking and thinking globally, more cooperation with other countries and other groups of people on science, humanities, all those things. We had wonderful people like, of course, that are still heroes today, Mother Teresa, Gandhi, Martin Luther King. I mean, some of them did get a little out of control, but we had those heroes that we looked to and tried to pattern what we were doing and thinking after them.
Was there a point in your life, just thinking of conflict personally, when your understanding of conflicts fundamentally changed? And then if there was kind of a change, what contributed to that shift?
I think it's a kind of a coming of age thing, probably for anybody, realizing that as a person, you are responsible as an adult to choose the kind of life you want and figure out your own. Sorry, it's emotional.
Hey friends, I wanted to fill you in a little bit on why my mother suddenly turns emotional when she talks about choosing what kind of life she wanted to live. She's going to share that her father was strict, but this isn't a generational thing about fathers in the 1950s and 1960s. My grandfather would have likely been diagnosed today with obsessive-compulsive disorder because his obsessions and micromanagement, they dictated an overwhelming number of things in my mom's life. From how you brush your teeth, to how you fix his breakfast in the morning, and then how you take care of the other 5 siblings that you're basically in charge of as a second mom. So when my mom finally grew up and got to move out of those controlled circumstances, whether it was in college or during her study abroads in Germany and France, she relished that freedom. In short, her emotion expresses not regret, but her joy in getting to finally choose her own paths and explore all that the world has to offer. She still does that today. What's the emotional part about it for you?
I think I was a conflict avoider because my father was very strict, and I think that was a generational thing, too, that I realized that it wasn't just him, it was parental authority a child should obey, and so we fit into those norms. But going off to college or getting a first job, all of those exciting changes made all of us realize that we are the motivators. We are the
you get to decide.
Get to decide how we want to live.
Yeah.
And of course, it came at the same time as all this 60s civil rights.
Oh, that's really interesting. Yeah.
So it was a bigger deal maybe than for some other generations. Mm-hmm. I mean, the Vietnam War was, for most of us, was a very negative thing.
Yeah.
But our parents, of course, maybe had a totally opposite view on the world and alliances and power and CIA and all these organizations that kind of divided us from our parents in many ways. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
That's interesting, though, that you're coming of age, like figuring out your own identity and your own freedom, making choices at the same time in society, where there's this huge push against institutions to change.
And there was also economically, most people had it better than they'd had, too. So I think most of us in my generation respected our parents and our grandparents for the sacrifices they had made during the Depression, during the Second World War particularly. We appreciated that, but we wanted to move on.
How do you decide personally when a conflict is worth engaging and when it's wiser to let it go? So, because you mentioned conflict avoidance, and I can relate to that because I've spent a lot of my life being conflict avoidant. But how do you, say just right now in your life, how do you decide this is worth it?
Generally, I think if it's going to matter next week or next month, generally I think establishing good relationships with people is more important than being right or proving my point. I think it's better just to back down and say, well, they feel this way, I feel this way, and we're probably not going to solve this problem right now anyway, and does it really matter? So I don't know if I really answered your question, but...
No, I mean, what I heard you say was that, you kind of evaluate, is this something is this a short-term thing, or does this matter over the long run for a relationship? Mm-hmm. So if it's important to a relationship, you want to do what you can to keep it.
I mean, I understand that I'm retired now, so I have a little different perspective. But, if you're providing for a family, your job is really important. It's on the line. You do need to fight for yourself. But for me, and I think for most situations, harmony and some compromise, if whatever is needed, is much more important than clashing. And I think we all want peace. We want peace in the world, but we also want peace of mind. And if we leave a conversation or a conflict feeling like somebody is lost and somebody is won, that's not very satisfying.
Yeah.
So I'd rather give somebody the benefit of the doubt and say, that's the way they think, and this is the way I think, and that's probably okay.
Yeah.
I don't
So is
know.
the idea to so say someone has a disagreement, even with recent events that are
Sure.
hard. Do you bring it up? Do you not bring it up? What would be your guide to make sure the relationship's good, but you're still able to talk about things that matter to you?
I think the important thing is to talk about how whatever those political things or whatever, how they affect you. I mean, how you've seen them in your own personal life, not accusing them of being wrong or misinformed, and find those things that we have in common and just listen to each other's experiences with those common things and how the laws or the political situation might be affecting us and why we feel the way we do.
Mm-hmm. So it sounds like you can still talk about it, but it's from your perspective, you talk from your own experience.
Right.
And how it affects you personally rather than either accusing someone outwardly or going into all these evidences.
Yeah.
That makes sense.
Mm-hmm. And just a personal example, my grandmother was very, very good at listening. And I think in our family we all consider her the mentor because I'm sure she didn't agree with a lot of the stuff that was going on when we were growing up. She didn't like rock music. She didn't like a lot of things, but we never felt that she was judging. I mean, she listened and helped us to understand our heritage with music, with photos, with stories. And I think that's what kind of gets lost these days is stories, our personal experiences. I think that can bridge a lot of gaps.
I want to pause to note the quiet power of family members who weave generations together through listening and warmth. Weavers are people who intentionally connect others by seeking understanding and fostering belonging. As I've studied my own family history, reaching back 3 and even 4 generations, I've come to recognize the influence of family weavers, both through their presence and through their absence. As my mom has shared, I've felt the connective strength my great-grandmother brought to my maternal line. I've also seen the lasting disconnection that can emerge in other branches of a family when no one takes up the work of weaving relationships together. Family ties don't just sustain themselves automatically. They require warmth, kindness, time, and the steady attention of those who genuinely care about the people in their family line. My hope is that we will each consider the power we have to weave lives together, even and perhaps especially when we don't agree about everything. What do you think younger generations say you're thinking about your grandchildren and eventually great-grandchildren? What do you think they most need to hear about conflict from people like you who've lived through earlier times of division?
I think they need to hear how we've overcome some of our challenges, our weaknesses. Again, stories. Nobody wants to be preached to. But I think if they can hear about things that have been exciting, interesting, things that have brought us joy, things that we would have done differently. I'm not thinking of real specific examples, but I think helping them to feel like they can get out of their comfort zone to learn about people and places that are different. And I'm excited for their futures.
Mm-hmm.
In a lot of ways, they have so much more available to them. You know, a couple generations ago, people did not travel. Most people didn't even get out of their community or their state, and they have so much more available to them, so much more knowledge, so many more books to read, people to know. The world is open,
Mm-hmm.
if they will use it the right way. Yeah.
So do you kind of see it like there's all these things open, but then there's maybe not this confidence to go like out there and like experience it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think there's a lot of fear. We talk about this generation as being more depressed, having more anxiety, because I think they're bombarded with too much, and a lot of them are not guided. They don't have, maybe they don't have the faith or the trust in institutions or people, or even maybe their families, their parents. They just feel like they're alone with a bunch of other people of their peers who also are confused. Mm-hmm. So it's very hard. People think self-esteem is a big issue for a lot of people. They don't feel seen or heard or listened to, or and they're actually just as smart, or maybe smarter than older generations, because they have more access to good information if they'll look in the right places and have the right people around them. I mean, even just having one or two mentors has been proven to be very helpful to anybody.
Yeah, this is kind of a follow-up question. How have you personally overcome fear? Because if that's kind of a big stumbling block for this current generation.
I think just recognizing that I am loved, I am valued, I have learned things that are helpful to me. I've been able to eliminate a lot of negative influences and thoughts. I've surrounded myself with good people, good books, good music. I've tried to simplify a little bit my activities.
So it sounds like part of it is like learning that about yourself, that you're loved, you have something to offer. But then I really like what you said about surrounding yourself with all these good things, whether it's music, books, people. Kind of eliminate the bad and the negative from your life, but try to surround yourself and kind of fill your life
and
with that,
filling
which is
your
good.
life with those good things makes you want to share them. And sharing what you love is very exciting. Sorry I'm so emotional, but I really believe that. And the whole idea of gratitude is very important. I mean, sorry.
It's okay.
I recognize that I have been very privileged. I also recognize that many people have almost none of those privileges.
You've recognized how many things that you've been given, and then so it sounds like your source of like not even just like love, but like kind of excitement for life is to extend those to other people.
Right. Yeah.
But that's kind of the meaning of it, maybe.
I mean, to me, it's very exciting to connect with a person who has some of my interests, maybe, but is from a different background or different persuasion in many, many areas of their life. But just to find those connections, and that brings out even more excitement. And I mean, it's thrilling to connect with people that you can learn from, that you can help and serve. Yeah.
If you could leave one guiding principle, which is tricky to say one, it doesn't have to just be one. If you could leave maybe, a couple guiding principles for navigating disagreement with integrity, what would it be?
I think one thing that I was told by a wise person once was to let the other person know that you never will completely understand them, but you want to understand.
So expressing that desire.
Yeah. So listening and validating that other person.
It's powerful. As we wrap up, I wanted to acknowledge that you've never done anything like this, been interviewed
never.
and have it be taped. But I actually think for me as a child, this is the epitome of something that I've learned that is precious from you, is to take the moments that you have and do something with them. And typically it's doing something that ultimately will be to serve other people. But that has been super influential over my life. And I appreciate you being willing to be vulnerable. And I can definitely sense how tender you are in talking about the people that you've been able to help and interact with over a lifetime. And that's been really important to you.
Yeah, I think every person that I have developed a friendship or relationship with has added to my character, to my joy, and I'm grateful for those.
I can definitely sense that. We started off, a lot of these questions are about conflict, but to me, as we're throughout the conversation, what I was hearing was relationships and connection, growth, learning, service, caring. And I think one reason why I really wanted to do this radio show initially was to show how to cross over conflict to create connection, that it's maintaining these relationships that really matter to us. And sometimes there is tension and it's not fun. But like you even mentioned, that we speak about things and then we try to determine how to maintain those relationships with our greater understanding of the other person. Mm-hmm. So as someone who's been deeply influential in my life, I appreciate you being willing to do something you haven't done before, and also just share your thoughts. In a culture where we're afraid, a lot of people are afraid or they've been hurt. Usually we don't want to put ourselves in situations where we could be hurt again, right? We don't want to be vulnerable. But it's through that vulnerability and like real sharing, that's where the connection comes. And that's, like you said, you feel joy when you're serving and actually working with people in an intimate way and not just on a superficial level. Right. But thank you so much for being
welcome.
Here. Yeah, I appreciate it.
Thank you for having me.
Friends, I was both surprised and deeply honored by how openly my mom shared her feelings during this interview. Growing up, she was incredibly busy and often under a lot of strain, raising 5 kids in a very challenging marriage. I remember her doing so much for us, but not often sharing her emotions freely. Even as a young adult, I wondered when or if she would ever feel comfortable voicing her true thoughts about the hard things she had survived. Knowing her as a naturally shy person, as I mentioned, she's wrestled with loneliness and disappointment. I now understand her reluctance to dwell on the past or revisit what has been painful. And yet, in this conversation, without going into detail about her trials, I heard something powerful: her deep hope, her gratitude, and her profound respect for individual dignity. I was especially moved by her appreciation for freedom of choice, the freedom to shape a life that feels authentic and meaningful. She is someone who has chosen to thrive, to truly live even into her 80s. She has not been defeated by her life's challenges, and neither should we be. We have so much to live for, especially the family relationships that ground us and give our lives transcendent meaning. As you move forward, I hope you will continue to seek connection, even in the face of disappointment. With time and intention, those challenges can become reservoirs of hope and gratitude, just as they have for my mom. That is my personal hope for myself and for all of us. I hope you've enjoyed this new season of Conflict Coach. I'm grateful to all of you who've listened along, and especially to each of the guests this season. Without their vulnerability and willingness to open up, this show would be quite different. Conflict Coach with Dr. Emily Taylor is a BYU radio podcast. I'd love to connect with you on social media. Find me on Facebook and Instagram at Conflict Coach with Dr. Emily, where I'm sharing more ideas for working through conflict.